Welcome to my channel. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and like. The sky of Clyros churned like dried blood, crimson dust clouds torn by the violet glow of a dying dwarf star. Below the thick haze, cold wind rested on a desolate landing strip, its scarred steel hull pocked like the hide of a forgotten beast. In the cockpit, Elias Kane hunched over a cracked console, fingers tracing a flickering screen, sifting through the static hum of the cosmos. A half-burned cigarette dangled from his lips, smoke curling like unspoken thoughts. He wasn't a pilot, wasn't a warrior. He was a fixer, patching the cracks in machines and sometimes in himself. Clyros 7, the station where he anchored, once blazed with mining lights. Now it was a heap of dead iron, a refuge for only those who fled. A metallic screech sliced through the silence from the rear hold, sharp as a blade. Elias froze, hand brushing the laser pistol taped under his seat, eyes narrowing as they scanned the dim corridor. 3 hours ago, a sleek black ship had landed, no signal, no hail. Figures in dark armor, faces hidden behind opaque visors, dragged a metal coffin into the hold. "A gift," the commander had said, voice cold as ice. "From the Black Star Coalition. Thanks for saving our patrol ship." Elias didn't want their gift. The Coalition didn't give gifts, they dumped trash, and their trash always came with thorns. He moved through the narrow corridor, the smell of machine oil stinging his nose, the cold steel floor etched with the footprints of lonely years. Overhead lights flickered, casting pale yellow beams on the coffin in the hold, its edges scorched and stained like dried blood. Through the clouded glass, a girl, or something like a girl, lay still in green fluid. Her skin shimmered with a blue sheen, like polished gemstone, her white hair floating like mist. Tiny circuits pulsed along her arms, faint, like stars about to die. A screen beside her flashed red, Specimen 9, Nexus Project. Malfunction. Authorized for disposal. Elias's chest tightened, as if he'd swallowed Clyros's dust. This wasn't a gift. It was a warning, a blade aimed at the past he tried to bury. He stood there, eyes locked on her. A thin scar ran across her forehead, precise, like the mark of cruel machinery, stirring memories of his own. 10 years ago, he'd been a prized Coalition engineer, until he refused to build a star-devouring weapon. They took everything, his reputation, his family, leaving him with cold wind and a burned scar over his heart, where ideals once beat. Memories of Jacob, his brother, surged, his fall in battle, a tolerable loss, in the Coalition's eyes. Elias hadn't saved him. The cigarette slipped from his lips, its ember snuffed on the steel floor. He pressed the emergency release, fingers trembling faintly. The fluid drained, the coffin hissing like a dying breath. Her body settled onto a gray pad, motionless, save for the faint rise and fall of her chest. The medical screen blinked, neural system disrupted. Nexus implant unstable. Collapse risk, 87%. She wasn't built to live. Elias knelt, checking the cables at her neck, thin as metal veins. A small fragment fell free, clinking sharply on the floor. He picked it up, reading the engraving, Lyra 9. Not Specimen 9. She had a name. Elias lifted her, startled by her lightness, as if she were wool more than matter. Cold wind wasn't built for guests. Corridors reeked of oil, walls cold steel, corners untouched by light. He carried her to a small room, once a part storage, now lined with thermal cloth, glowing faintly under a yellow lamp. He laid her on a cot, pulling a thin blanket over her. She curled slightly, eyelids twitching, as if fighting a dream with no escape. Elias sank into a chair beside her, his breath blending with the hum of the ventilation system. He returned to the hold, inspecting the coffin. A hidden compartment slid open, revealing a black data recorder, pulsing red. He plugged it into the console, and the screen lit up, Nexus Project, Phase 3. Lyra 9, Strategic Trial. Status, Failure. Directive, Terminate. Elias scrolled through the data, fingers tightening. Lyra 9 was crafted to lead fleets, a living intelligence powered by a Nexus core, but she'd defied orders. The coalition didn't forgive. They let her die slowly, a warning to any who dared resist. Elias yanked the recorder free, hurling it to the floor, the metallic clang like a curse. Back in the room, he pulled a metal cup from his coat, filling it with water from an old purifier. The water was clear, cool, a rarity on Clyros. He set the cup on the floor, a few steps away, respecting her space. She remained still, but her breathing steadied, each breath a quiet rebellion against the dark. Elias watched her, Jacob's memory rising again, his smile, his dreams of stars. He hadn't saved him, but this girl, Lyra, still had a chance. Not again, he whispered, voice rough, unsure if he spoke to her or himself. Outside, Clyros's winds howled through rocky crevices, carrying red dust like blood. In the small room, the yellow light softened, Lyra's faint breaths unyielding, like a lone star under a shattered sky. Elias checked the medical console. Her nexus core was killing her from within, but he knew machines, knew how to mend the broken. He'd start here, with her, with what the coalition called trash. He didn't know who she was, but she had a name, and that was enough to fight for. Lyra 9 woke to silence, a stillness sharp as a blade, free of the droning machines and cold voices commanding through neural wires. The air was warm, tinged with the scent of burnt metal and dry wood, like the ashes of a fading fire. A pale yellow lamp glowed overhead, its soft light forcing her to blink, alien yet gentle, as if it didn't belong to her. She wasn't in a lab. No cables bound her, no needles pierced her veins. Only scarred steel walls, a thin blanket draped across her chest, and the sensation of freedom, fragile, terrifying, making her tremble within her metallaced bones. She tried to sit, but pain erupted along her spine, where the nexus core growled like a chained beast. She'd been a weapon once, a living intelligence forged to command fleets, calculating strategies faster than any AI. But she'd felt, questioned, refused orders. They broke her, piece by piece, circuit by circuit, memory by memory. Her fingers traced the scar on her forehead, thin and cold, the mark of silver blades and a soulless voice. Defective. Useless. She bit her lip, nails digging into the blanket, holding back the tide of memories. Footsteps echoed outside the door, slow, heavy, like the pulse of an old machine. Lyra stiffened, combat instincts flaring despite her frail body. She scanned the room, seeking exits, weapons, anything to avoid becoming prey. The door opened, and Elias Kane stepped in, tall, shoulders slumped, his coat stained with black oil. He held a metal cup, steam rising, faint in the lamplight. Water, he said, voice rough, neither threatening nor soft. Not hot, not cold. Don't know what you can handle. He set the cup on the floor, a few steps away, as if he understood her need for distance, for an invisible wall. She studied him, analyzing like the machine she'd been, male, human, mid-40s. Burn scar peeking from collar. No visible weapons, but hand near hip, defensive stance. Who are you? She asked, voice weak but sharp, like a blade testing an enemy. Elias Kane, he replied, eyes steady on hers. This is my ship. Cold wind. She glanced at the ceiling, searching for cameras, sensors, signs of the coalition. None, only cold steel and yellow light. Why am I here? Elias shrugged, his gaze darkening, as if peering into a nameless past. They thought you were trash. I disagreed. Trash cut her like a knife, sharper than the pain of the Nexus core. She remembered the lab, technicians erasing her memories, each fragment dissolving like dust. But one memory clung, a voice, not coalition, whispering through neural wires. You're not a machine, Lyra. Don't let them win. She searched Elias's face for lies, a smirk, a glance away. None. Only exhaustion etched his features, and a deep sadness, like Clyros's shadows. I'll fix your Nexus core, Elias said, turning away, voice flat as a report. It's killing you. Needs time. She gripped the cot's edge, nails tearing the fabric, leaving jagged marks. Why help me? Elias paused, hand on the doorframe, back taut as if bearing a weight. I left someone behind once, he said, voice rough, almost a whisper. I live with it every day. He left, leaving her with the cup and a question that stabbed deep. If this wasn't a trap, what was it? Lyra stared at the cup, its steam fading. She touched it, fingers trembling, circuits pulsing faintly on her hand. The water was cool, clear, not the sterile fluid of the coalition. She drank, a small sip, a strange sensation spreading through her throat. Her eyes stung, not from pain or fear, but from something she didn't understand, like a deleted memory returning, faint but real. She gazed at the steel walls, scratches mapping a wanderer's path. The lab had taken her name, her will, dreams she didn't know she'd had. But she was here, still breathing, though the Nexus core hissed in her chest, each pulse a threat. She traced her scar, following its cold seam. They called her defective, but she'd defied orders, chosen. What did that mean? She didn't know, but it was enough to want answers. She tried to stand, the Nexus core screaming, pain like lightning tearing her bones. She clenched her teeth, silent, refusing to be weak before the man who saw her as more than scrap. She inhaled deeply, forcing her body to obey, but her legs buckled, hands slamming the steel floor, breath ragged. Elias appeared at the door, eyes concerned, but he said nothing. He knelt, a few steps away, as he had with the cup. You tried too soon, he said, voice rough, not scolding. I don't need you. Lyra snapped, voice sharp but frail, pushing herself up. Elias shrugged, a flicker of amusement in his eyes, though his lips didn't smile. I know. But you did right. Slow down. He stood, pointing to the cup. Drink more. You need it. He left, leaving her with the cold floor and a fire burning in her chest. Lyra gripped the cup, taking another sip, the water easing her pain. She stared down the dark corridor where Elias vanished. He wasn't like the Coalition technicians, didn't see her as a tool. But he wasn't a friend yet. She touched her Nexus core, its metal pulse echoing, and a memory flashed. Don't let them win. She didn't know who spoke, but she wouldn't let them win. She set the cup down, eyes sharp as blades. She'd live, not for the Coalition, not for Elias, but for herself. 3 days passed, Elias working in the engine bay, hands black with oil, eyes red from sleepless nights. The green glow of the console lit his weathered face, highlighting its harsh lines. Lyra's Nexus core was a cruel masterpiece, a metal heart, both lifeline and shackle. Forged to control her, it turned on her when she resisted, each pulse burning her neural system. Elias wasn't a doctor, no longer a Coalition engineer. But he knew how to mend the broken. He'd patched Cold Wind, patched himself through years of solitude. Now he'd patch her. He pried open a metal panel on a replica of the Nexus core, salvaged from the coffin's data. Tiny circuits pulsed like lost stars. Each surge was a threat, a reminder that the Coalition didn't build her to last. He connected wires carefully, adjusting energy flow, each move deliberate, like walking on thin ice. One mistake, and the core would erupt, erasing her, and him. But Elias didn't stop. He couldn't. Jacob's image haunted him, his smile, his dreams of stars, the moment he fell, a loss, in the Coalition's eyes. Elias gripped his wrench, nails biting his palm. He hadn't saved Jacob, but Lyra had a chance. But the core hissed, a reverse surge exploding, scorching a wire's end, jolting Elias's hand back, the acrid smell of burned metal filling the air. He cursed, eyes scanning the screen, energy fluctuating. Collapse risk, 89%. This core wasn't just machinery, it was a nightmare, forged to resist repair. Elias rummaged his pack, pulling a salvaged conductor from Cold Wind, hands trembling but precise. He cut, spliced, forced the energy to stabilize, like chaining a beast. Sweat beaded on his brow, but he couldn't pause. You'll live, he whispered, unsure if he spoke to the core or himself. In the small room, Lyra sat still, eyes fixed on the yellow lamp, as if it held an unsolved riddle. She spoke little, answering in short, sharp sentences, as if words might betray weakness. She tried to stand, not once, but daily, each time the Nexus core screamed, pain like electric shocks ripping her bones. She bit down, silent, refusing to seem frail before the man who saw her not as scrap, but as someone, though she wasn't sure what she was. She touched her forehead scar, the silver blade's mark, and a memory flashed, a voice whispering, "You're not a machine, Lyra." She gripped the cot, nails tearing fabric, vowing not to let that memory fade. On the fourth day, she succeeded. She stood, no wall, no frame. Her legs trembled, the Nexus core roared in her chest, but she stood, chest heaving, breath ragged like victory. She took one step, the steel floor cold beneath her. Another, slow, steady. A third, she swayed but held. On the fourth, her legs buckled, hands slamming the floor, the steel ringing like a challenge. Sweat glistened on her blue-tinted skin. Elias appeared at the door, silent, kneeling a few steps away, eyes calm but bright. "I walked," Lyra whispered, voice sharp, defiant, daring him, or herself, to acknowledge it. "I know," he replied, voice soft as wine through Clyrose's rocks. "Not for me. For you." She met his gaze, her golden eyes glinting, a small flame in the dark. "Why don't you fear me?" she asked, voice low, almost accusing. "I'm a weapon." Elias smiled, a sad, weary smile, like one who'd seen too much. "Weapons don't walk because they want to. Weapons don't ask questions. You're not a weapon, Lyra. You're a survivor." The word survivor echoed in her mind, strange, like a discordant note she couldn't forget. She lifted the cup he'd left, drinking a sip. The cool water soothed her chest's ache. She hated the sting in her eyes, as if her body betrayed her, wanting to cry when she didn't know what crying was. Elias stood, leaving the room, his slouched silhouette vanishing down the dark corridor. Lyra sat, fingers brushing the Nexus core at her neck, its metal pulse steady, each beat a reminder of what the Coalition wanted her to be. A memory came unbidden, sharp as a blade. She stood in a glass corridor, white light slicing her eyes. A man, not Elias, held a glowing device, voice urgent. "Lyra, if you wake, find Ether 12. He's the key." The memory dissolved like dust in wind, but the name Ether 12 clung, a knife carved into bone. She wasn't the only specimen. There were others, and they, like her, had been called defective. She gripped the cot, nails digging deep, tearing new gashes. A fire burned in her chest, not from the Nexus core, but something deeper, something the Coalition couldn't erase. She'd find Ether 12, friend or foe. She looked at the cup, yellow light reflecting on its surface, a small flame in the dark. She drank again, slowly, each sip a vow. She didn't know who she was, weapon, specimen, or survivor, but she'd find out, step by step. In the engine bay, Elias resumed work, the green console light glinting on his oil-stained, scarred hands. He checked the core's replica, red indicators flashing, energy unstable. Collapse risk, 85%. He tightened his wrench, lips pressed in. This core was a masterpiece, but also a curse, and he had days to break it before it killed her. He thought of Lyra, her golden eyes, the way she walked despite pain. She wasn't Jacob, but she shared one thing, an unyielding will, even when the universe demanded they fall. He paused, gazing through the engine bay's window. Clyrose's sky burned red, dust swirling like blood. Somewhere out there, the Coalition hunted, and their time was running short. Elias wiped his hands on his coat, eyes hardening. He didn't know who Lyra was, but she had a name, and he wouldn't let her become another loss. In the small room, Lyra stood again, slowly, legs trembling but unbroken. She stared down the dark corridor where Elias worked and whispered, "I will live." Not for him, not for the Coalition, but for herself. On the 10th night, cold wind shuddered, a deep tremor, as if the ship sensed fear seeping through its steel skin. Elias bolted to the cockpit, hands still slick with oil, eyes sharp under the console's pale green glow. Lyra followed, her steps slow but steady, each one a defiance of the Nexus core hissing in her chest. The screen flashed red, a coded Coalition signal burning like blood on black. Specimen 9, Nexus core activated without authorization. Location confirmed. Pursuit team arrives in 72 hours. Lyra gripped the console's edge, nails scratching metal, leaving marks like traces of rage. They don't want me alive, she said, voice icy, a blade cutting through the dark. Elias's fingers danced over the screen, analyzing the signal, eyes narrowing. Not just you, he said, voice rough, taut as a wire. Your core's broadcasting, but not because of you. Something's calling it. Lyra touched the scar on her forehead, fingers tracing its cold seam. A memory flickered, faint but sharp, a sterile lab, a voice whispering through neural wires, and a name, Ether 12. There's another, she murmured, golden eyes glinting like a small flame. Another specimen. They didn't erase us all. She stood taller, the Nexus core hissing, but she didn't flinch, as if her will outmatch the pain. Elias met her gaze, eyes hard, like steel forged in fire. If they come, we fight, he said, hand brushing the laser pistol at his hip. Lyra shook her head, eyes fixed on the screen. No running. No fighting. I have to find Ether 12. If he's alive, he knows how to destroy the Nexus. How to destroy the Coalition. Elias hesitated, fingers tightening on the chair, then nodded, his gaze softening. Then we go together. Lyra looked at him, for the first time without doubt, without a wall between them. Not because you have to, she said, voice low but firm. Because I want you there. Elias took her hand, gentle but steady, like an anchor in a storm. I'm here, Lyra. I'm not going anywhere. He flipped the controls, cold wind roaring to life, plunging into the cosmic dark, stars streaking past like embers. But as Elias checked the radar, a second signal blinked, not from the Coalition, but from a small, fast ship trailing them like a predator. We've got a tail, he said, voice tight, gripping the controls. Lyra stared at the screen, eyes narrowing, circuits on her hand pulsing faintly. Not the pursuit team, she said, voice low, as if recognizing an old enemy. This is a hunter. The stranger's signal broadcast a brief message, red text flashing on the screen. Lyra 9, I am Ether 12. I come to free you, or destroy you. Lyra stiffened, her Nexus core hissing, as if answering the call. The one she needed to find was hunting her. Elias pushed the throttle, cold wind rattling, but the stranger's ship clung close, firing a warning laser, its red beams slicing the void, making the hull hum. Lyra plugged neural wires into the console, fingers trembling but precise, hacking the comms channel. A deep, blade-sharp voice crackled through the speakers. Lyra 9, I am Ether 12. The Coalition wants you dead. I want you alive, if you surrender the Nexus core. Lyra's brow furrowed, golden eyes blazing with anger. You know me, she said, voice cold. Why hunt me? Ether 12's dry laugh echoed, like Clyros's wind. Because you're the key to destroying them. If you refuse, I'll take the core from your corpse. Elias cursed, yanking the controls, dodging a second laser, its red glow sweeping the cockpit, casting long shadows on the steel walls. He's not kidding, he said, eyes glued to the radar. He's faster than us. Lyra cut the comms, unplugging her wires, hands shaking but eyes hard. He was in the lab, she said, voice low, like confessing a wound. A specimen like me. But he chose a different path. She touched her Nexus core, a memory flaring, a glass corridor, Ether 12 beside her, red eyes burning, whispering. We'll break them, Lyra. At any cost. But the memory deepened. White light seared her eyes, silver blades hissed on an operating table. Ether 12 thrashed against chains, roaring as technicians wired his core. They'll pay, he said, voice breaking, like fire trapped in steel. Lyra watched, golden eyes glinting, wanting to believe, but saw darkness spread in his gaze, not hope, but rage consuming all. Not at that cost, she whispered, but he didn't hear. The memory dissolved, leaving a cold cut. He'd chosen destruction, even if it meant burning the universe. Elias glanced at her, eyes both worried and resolute. What does he want with the core? Lyra shook her head, nails digging into the armrest. A kill code, she said, voice trembling faintly. The Nexus Project's final weapon. If he gets it, he could erase the Coalition, or become something worse. Elias's lips tightened, gripping the controls. Then we beat him to it. He steered through a dust cloud, hoping to mask their signal, but the radar still blinked, Ether 12's ship a shadow impossible to shake. Lyra sank into the co-pilot's seat, hands trembling but swift, plugging neural wires back in, hacking deeper into the ship's systems. She searched for traces of Ether 12, any clue about him. Data flashed, fragmented but enough. Specimen 12, Nexus Project. Status, escaped. Threat level high. He'd fled like her, but didn't run. He hunted. She disconnected, golden eyes glinting, not with fear, but resolve. He knows where we are, she said, voice sharp. He won't stop. Elias stared into the void, stars like predator's eyes. Then we find him first, he said, voice rough, like a vow. Not to give him the code. To break it. Lyra nodded, gripping the armrest, her Nexus core hissing, as if in agreement. She didn't know if Ether 12 was friend or foe, but one thing was clear, she wouldn't let him, or the Coalition, decide her fate. Cold wind tore through the dark, its engines roaring like a heartbeat. In the cockpit, Elias and Lyra sat silent, the red glow of Ether 12's signal blinking, a flame in the night. They didn't speak, but their eyes met, a wordless promise. They'd face whatever came, together. Beyond, the universe was quiet, but Ether 12's signal pulsed, a whisper from the void, calling Lyra's name, calling the war yet to begin. Cold wind surged through an asteroid field, massive rocks gliding past like phantoms in the void. Elias gripped the controls in the cockpit, eyes cold and precise, the instincts of a survivor honed through countless ambushes. Lyra sat beside him, hands clutching the seat, her Nexus core pulsing green beneath her skin, a second heart beating in her chest. The stranger's ship, a sleek, black warcraft, angular like a blade, trailed close, firing red lasers that sliced the void, making cold wind's steel hull resonate. Elias swerved past an asteroid, the ship tilting lightly, engines growling like a beast. He doesn't want us dead, he said, voice rough, eyes locked on the radar. He wants us to stop. Lyra plugged neural wires into the console, fingers trembling but swift, hacking the comms channel. Ether 12, she said, voice sharp as a blade. If you want to destroy the Coalition, why hunt me? A deep, cold voice crackled through, like wind over Clyros's rocks. Because your core holds the kill code, the Nexus Project's final weapon. Surrender it, or die. Lyra cut the link, golden eyes blazing with anger, turning to Elias. He was an ally in the lab, she said, voice low, like tracing a scar. But now he's something else. A predator. Elias steered into a dust cloud, cosmic debris swirling, masking their radar signal. The engines whined, cold wind rattling, but Ether 12's ship clung close, a shadow unshakable. A laser struck the auxiliary engine, red light erupting, the ship lurching as damage alerts flashed red on the console. Elias cursed, yanking the controls, stabilizing the ship. Lyra lunged to the console, hands trembling but precise, fingers flying over the screen, rerouting power from auxiliary systems to shields. I won't let him take us, she said, voice hard as steel, golden eyes burning. Elias nodded, a faint smile flickering, though his lips didn't move. You learn fast. They cleared the dust cloud, stars reappearing, cold as predators' eyes. But the radar screamed, a new signal blinking, a Coalition fleet, distant but closing, locking onto both ships. Lyra stiffened, her Nexus core hissing fiercely, as if sensing the threat. Ether 12 isn't just hunting us, she said, voice low, sharp. He's baiting the Coalition. Elias cursed again, gripping the controls, eyes scanning the void. Dirty game, he said, voice rough. We need to vanish. He aimed for a dead planet nearby, its surface scarred with black basalt and craters like time's wounds. They landed in a cave, cold stones swallowing their signal, hiding cold wind in the dark. In the cave, Lyra's Nexus core pulsed, casting green flickers on the basalt walls, like a faint flame. It hissed, not with pain, but like a whisper from deep within its circuits, a signal ancient and strange, as if a beast growled beneath the stone. She touched it, fingers tracing cold metal, and a memory crashed in, sharp as a blade, a sterile lab, she and Ether 12 strapped to operating tables, neural wires buried in bone. His eyes, red and fierce, held rage but also hope, meeting hers through white light. A man, not Coalition, the lead engineer, leaned close, embedding the kill code in her core, whispering, "If you survive, you can destroy it all. Find Ether 12. He knows the code." The memory shattered, but the words clung, a knife carved into bone. She told Elias, voice trembling, golden eyes glinting in the dark. "Ether 12 doesn't want to save me," she said, clutching her Nexus core. "He wants the kill code to activate the core, a superweapon to erase the Coalition's fleets." Elias frowned, the core's light etching his burned scar. "If he gets it?" he asked, voice rough, dreading the answer. Lyra met his gaze, eyes heavy, as if carrying the universe. "He'll become worse than the Coalition. A machine of destruction, not just for them, but for everything." Elias stood, pacing to the cave wall, hand brushing cold stone, as if anchoring himself to reality. "Then we can't let him have it," he said, voice hard, but his eyes flickered with worry, not for himself, but for her. Lyra nodded, hand still on her core, its metal pulse sinking with her breath. "But the kill code is in me," she said, voice low, like a confession. "If I die, he'll take it from my corpse." Elias turned, eyes sharp, like steel forged in fire. "You won't die," he said, voice rough, a vow. "I lost someone once. Not again." The cave was silent, save for the core's hiss and water dripping from the walls. Lyra watched Elias, seeing Jacob in his eyes, not a man, but a pain, a promise he carried like chains. She stood, legs still trembling, but stepped closer, her core's light bathing them both, a green flame in the night. "I don't want your promise for the past," she said, voice sharp but soft, the first time without a wall between them. "Promise for me for now." Elias met her gaze, eyes softening, like ice melting under sun. "I promise," he said, hand brushing her shoulder, light but enough to feel. Outside, the radar blinked, Ether 12 signal lingering, a phantom in the dark. The Coalition fleet approached, slow but relentless, like a blade nearing the throat. In the cave, Elias and Lyra stood together, the Nexus core's light flickering, a flame refusing to die. They didn't speak, but their eyes met, a silent vow, they'd face Ether 12, the Coalition, even the core in her chest, together. The cave's darkness swallowed all sound, but the Nexus core hissed, calling the war yet to come. In the cave, darkness devoured light, only the faint green glow of Lyra's Nexus core dancing on the basalt walls. Elias knelt by Cold Wind's auxiliary engine, hands black with oil, eyes red from sleepless nights. The clank of his wrench echoed steadily, like the ship's heartbeat. Lyra stood beside him, clutching a small wrench, golden eyes focused, learning the rhythm of machinery. Elias guided her to tighten a bolt, voice rough but patient. "Slow," he said, adjusting her grip. "Machines are like people. Push too hard, they break." She learned quickly, hands trembling but steady, as if her will outstripped her fragile body. They worked in silence, reinforcing shields, repairing the engines scorched by Ether 12's laser. Water dripped from the cave walls, blending with the clank of metal, a strange melody of the dark. In a quiet moment, Lyra paused, staring at the wrench, voice low, almost a whisper. "Why not leave me? It'd be easier." Elias stopped, holding a bolt, eyes meeting hers, deep and sad, as if seeing the universe in her golden gaze. "Because I know what it's like to be left," he said, voice rough, a blade through memory. "And because you deserve to live, Lyra. Not for the Coalition, not for Ether 12. For you." Lyra touched his hand, fingers cold, circuits pulsing faintly, but her fingertips warmed, as if drawing heat from him. "I don't know what that feels like, living for myself," she said, voice trembling, confessing a secret she'd barely grasped. Elias smiled, weary but genuine, like the yellow lamp in Cold Wind. "You'll learn," he said, hand resting on hers, light but firm. I'm here to help. They resumed work, silent, but the space between them softened, as if an invisible wall had cracked. They labored until dawn, faint purple light seeping through rock crevices, staining the cave floor like diluted blood. The engine was stable, shields strong enough for a few more laser hits. But Lyra's Nexus core suddenly hissed, its green glow flaring, not just calling Ether 12 but a third entity, unseen but powerful. The cave trembled, basalt splitting, and from the earth's depths, a war machine rose, tall, spider-like, its 8 metal legs sharp as blades, red eyes blazing like furnaces. Metal scraped stone, a roar from an ancient beast. Elias grabbed his laser pistol, shoving Lyra behind him, but she stepped forward, golden eyes unflinching. Don't shoot, she said, voice sharp, plugging neural wires into the nearest machine, her hand circuits flashing wildly. She faced the ancient AI within, its voice booming, like thunder from the universe's core. Intruders, you bear the Nexus mark. You are enemies. Lyra stood tall, her core hissing, but her voice was steel. I'm no enemy. I'm Lyra 9, and I refuse to be anyone's weapon. The AI paused, red eyes scanning her, as if reading every circuit in her body. You choose freedom? It asked, voice low, a challenge. Lyra nodded, eyes blazing. And I'll die to protect it. The machine stilled, its red eyes dimming, as if conceding. The AI spoke, slow, like recounting a buried tale. I am the Nexus Project's guardian, betrayed by the Coalition, left in stone. The Nexus wasn't a weapon. It was a dream, but they turned it to chains. It transmitted a code fragment to Lyra, a shimmering data string, part of the kill code Ether 12 sought. Use it to destroy the Nexus. The AI said, voice like wind through rock. Or become the destroyer. Lyra unplugged her wires, hands trembling, the code burning in her mind, a flame unquenchable. Elias pulled her from the machine, eyes worried, hands gripping her shoulders. We have to go, he said, voice rough, scanning the cave walls. Ether 12's coming. He's closer than we thought. Lyra nodded, golden eyes glinting, not with fear, but resolve. The code in her was a key, but also a blade. It could destroy the Nexus, or make her what the Coalition wanted, a soulless weapon. She touched her core, its metal pulse syncing with her breath, and a memory flashed, Ether 12, red eyes, whispering in the lab. We'll break them, Lyra. But he'd chosen another path, and she wouldn't follow. They ran to cold wind, purple light from the rock crevices bathing the ship, a warning. Elias checked the radar, Ether 12's signal blinking, closer, a phantom gliding through the dark. Lyra stood in the cockpit, gripping the armrest, her core hissing, calling the war. He'll find me, she said, voice low, sharp. For this code. Elias met her gaze, eyes hard, like steel forged in fire. Then we find him first, he said, flipping the controls, engines roaring. Not to give it. To break it. Cold wind left the cave, plunging into the dark, stars streaking like embers. In the cockpit, Lyra and Elias were silent, the Nexus core's light flickering, a green flame in the night. They didn't speak, but their eyes met, a silent vow. They'd face Ether 12, the Coalition, and the Nexus itself, together. Outside, Ether 12's signal pulsed, a whisper from the void, calling Lyra, the code, the war unavoidable. Elias and Lyra sprinted through the cave, their ragged breaths mingling with the crunch of stone underfoot. Faint purple light from rock crevices bathed cold wind, the ship standing silent, like a predator awaiting its cue. But before they could board, a red laser beam sliced the air, triggering an explosion that collapsed the exit in a deafening roar. Basalt shattered, dust choking the air, sealing their escape. Elias yanked Lyra behind a boulder, gripping his laser pistol, eyes scanning the dark with icy precision. The radar in his coat pocket screeched, Ether 12 had arrived, and he wasn't alone. Ether 12's sleek black ship landed outside the cave, its engines growling like a beast. The hatch opened, and Ether 12 stepped out, his skin shimmering blue like Lyra's, red eyes blazing like furnaces, his Nexus core exposed on his chest, pulsing green like a burning heart. Behind him, a squad of mercenaries in black armor followed, their plasma rifles glinting in the dark. Surrender the kill code, Lyra. Ether 12 said, his voice deep and sharp as a blade, echoing off the cave walls. Or I'll rip it from your skull. Lyra stood tall, her nexus core hissing, golden eyes flaring with defiance. You have no right to command me, she said, voice cold, like steel forged in fire. Elias fired, a green laser cutting the air, dropping a mercenary, their armor cracking as they hit the stone. He fired again, felling another, but Ether 12 was too fast, his nexus core amplifying his strength, moving like a phantom. He lunged, metal hand clamping Elias's throat, lifting him off the ground. You don't belong in this fight, human. Ether 12 snarled, eyes red-hot. Elias gritted his teeth, hand scrambling for the dagger at his hip, plunging it into a seam in Ether 12's armor, sparks flying, but the grip didn't loosen. Lyra charged, plugging neural wires into a fragment of the ancient spider machine, still dormant in the cave. She hacked its system, wielding the AI's code to disrupt Ether 12's nexus core. You're not a god, she said, voice sharp, golden eyes blazing. You're a slave to your rage. The kill code flashed in her mind, a green flame, and she sent it through the wires, short-circuiting Ether 12's system. He roared, releasing Elias, collapsing to his knees, his core flickering chaotically, like a star about to die. The mercenaries hesitated, rifles lowering, their eyes darting between Ether 12 and Lyra. But the cave trembled again, not from stone, but from the roar of Coalition fleet engines. White light from patrol ships swept through the crevices, like the eyes of a predator. Elias's radar screeched, its screen flooded with red. The fleet had surrounded the planet, targeting both Cold Wind and Ether 12's ship. Elias pulled Lyra, dodging mercenary lasers, sprinting to their ship. We go, now! He shouted, voice raw, wrenching the hatch open. Lyra followed, her nexus core hissing fiercely, as if sensing a blade at her throat. Cold Wind roared to life, blasting through the encirclement, Coalition lasers slicing the void, rattling the hull. Elias piloted, hands gripping the controls, eyes sharp, dodging each shot with the precision of one who'd survived the dark. Lyra sat in the co-pilot's seat, clutching the kill code in her mind, like holding a flame that could burn the universe. She knew activating it could destroy the fleet, a pulse strong enough to disable every ship, every machine. But at what cost? The code would consume her nexus core, kill her, and perhaps Ether 12, if he still lived. She glanced at Elias, golden eyes glinting, not with fear, but resolve. Elias seized her hand, still slick with oil, eyes worried but firm. You don't have to do this, he said, voice raw, almost pleading. We'll find another way. Lyra smiled, a true smile, small but bright, like the yellow lamp in Cold Wind. I know, she said, voice soft, squeezing his hand. But this time I choose. She plugged neural wires into the console, the kill code flaring, a green flame in her mind. She tweaked it, not to destroy, but to send a precise electromagnetic pulse, enough to disable the fleet without killing. The Coalition shields, forged to resist such pulses, flickered as Lyra's code, a dream fragment from the ancient AI, sliced through, shattering their circuits like dust. Green light erupted from her nexus core, spreading through the ship, into space, snuffing out the fleet's lights, leaving their ships drifting, lifeless. Lyra collapsed, her core dimming, its green glow faint as dying embers. Elias caught her, panic surging, hands trembling as he lifted her from the steel floor. Don't leave me, Lyra! He shouted, voice breaking, eyes blurring, as if seeing Jacob in her. Lyra's eyes fluttered open, weak, her golden gaze glinting, a star refusing to fade. I'm not leaving, she whispered, voice thin as thread. I just need rest. Her nexus core hissed once more, shifting to dormancy, its green light fading, shielding her from itself. Elias held her close, breath ragged, fingers brushing her white hair, as if she might dissolve. In the cockpit, Cold Wind glided past the inert fleet, Coalition ships floating like corpses in the void. The radar fell silent, no signal from Ether 12, only the steady hum of the engines, like the ship's heartbeat. But as Elias scanned the screen one last time, a faint signal blinked, fading, a black ship, Ether 12's, limping through the dark, its nexus core dim as ash. He was alive, but didn't pursue, retreating like a wounded predator. Lyra touched the armrest, golden eyes glinting, silent, but Elias knew he'd return, carrying a rage that burned eternal. Elias looked at Lyra, his gaze softening, though fear lingered. She still breathed, her chest rising faintly, each breath a vow, she was here, still fighting. He flipped the controls, the ship plunging into the dark, away from the fleet, Ether 12, and the Coalition's blade. In the void their eyes met, wordless, but enough to say they'd survived, and they'd keep going, together. 2 months passed, Elias and Lyra anchoring on an unnamed planet, a speck lost on Coalition maps. Their home, cobbled from dry wood and recycled steel, stood by a shimmering lake, its waters mirroring a deep blue sky, free of Clyrose's red dust. Gentle winds carried the scent of fresh grass, a faint earthiness, far from the oil and burnt metal of cold wind. Lyra still moved with difficulty, the Nexus core's aftereffects sparking sudden pains, like dull blades in her bones. Yet each morning, she stepped onto the porch, barefoot on wood, breathing clean air, her golden eyes glinting in the early sun. Elias sat nearby, hands stained with oil, tinkering with an old device, looking up at her footsteps. "You're back," he said, voice rough, a weary but genuine smile. "I never left," Lyra replied, her gaze soft, like the lake's surface when the wind stilled. They lived simply, like wanderers finding a mooring. Mornings, Elias brewed tea from herbs by the lake, its gentle aroma filling the air. They sat on the porch, sharing stories. Elias spoke of earth, of green forests, and waves crashing on stone, known only through books. Lyra listened, cradling her tea, golden eyes glinting, as if picturing a world she'd never seen. At night they lay on the roof, gazing at stars, specks of light like distant signals. Lyra sometimes woke gasping, dreaming of the lab, silver blades, and a soulless voice. "Defective." But Elias was there, holding her in the dark, no words needed, only warmth to pull her back. The Coalition didn't hunt them. The disabled fleet had thrown them into chaos, at least for now. Cold wind rested behind the house, cloaked in camouflage, engines silent but ready. Elias checked it weekly, like tending an old hunting beast, unwilling to let it sleep. Lyra often watched, hand brushing its scarred hull, eyes distant, as if hearing the Nexus core's call. It no longer hissed, no longer threatened, but its faint pulse lingered, a reminder she'd never be ordinary. One afternoon, as the red sun sank behind the hills, Lyra sat on the porch, holding an old comms device Elias had repaired. A signal blinked, not from the Coalition, but from others, Nexus specimens, like her, scattered across the cosmos. A faint hum crackled through, like whispers from the void, calling her name. She gripped the device, nails scratching metal, golden eyes glinting, not with fear, but resolve. Elias stepped out, wiping his hands, eyes worried but silent. He sat beside her, waiting, as he always did. "I want to find them," Lyra said, voice low, firm, as if decided through sleepless nights. "The others like me. They're alive, Elias. They're calling." She looked at him, not seeking permission, but offering an invitation, like when she chose him in Cold Wind's cockpit. Elias gazed at the lake, its water reflecting his eyes, deep and sad, carrying Jacob and years of solitude. "Then we'll go," he said, voice rough, hand brushing hers. "Together." Lyra nodded, a small smile blooming, not radiant, but real, like the first star in the night. They stood, stepping inside, purple light from the sky spilling through the window, like a promise of dawn. Elias checked the comms device, signals from other specimens still humming, faint but unyielding, like embers in the dark. Lyra touched her Nexus core, its metal pulse sinking with her breath, no longer a chain, but part of her, like the scar on her forehead, like her golden eyes that never surrendered. She didn't know who the others were, friend or foe, but she knew they, like her, had been called defective, and they, like her, had chosen to live. That night they stood on the porch under a star-strewn sky, gentle winds carrying scents of grass and earth. Elias held Lyra from behind, chin resting on her shoulder, his warmth easing the Nexus Core's pain. They weren't weapons, weren't trash, but survivors who'd chosen freedom, chosen each other. The comms device blinked, signals from the specimens like new flames in the dark, calling a war unfinished. Lyra clasped Elias's hand, fingers entwined, golden eyes fixed on the stars. "We'll find them," she said, voice low, a vow. Elias squeezed her hand, gaze soft but firm. "And we'll live," he replied, voice rough, an anchor in the storm. The nameless sky blazed, stars glinting like the eyes of other survivors, out there somewhere. Cold wind stood silent behind the house, but its engines, like Elias and Lyra's hearts, never slept. The war with the Coalition, Ether 12, and the Nexus Core wasn't over, but this time, they wouldn't fight alone. In the dark, their eyes met, wordless, but enough to say, they'd found each other, and that was the dawn of every beginning.